I've been going through boxes since my surgery and found one of the greatest violin lessons of all. For those students under 50 or 60 years old, Mr. BoJangles isn't just a legend or a song. He was a real live person. His given name, or to be a little more accurate, the name he stole from his little brother, was Bill Robinson. And this violin lesson was first taught in the 1930s. Of course, one problem with all of the secrecy at the Romantic School of Music, especially during the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, is that some things did get lost. But since this box still contains unique, one-of-a-kind photographs, publicity photos, and the original photograph album from Mr. BoJangles' 60th birthday party, I'll share everything with you while giving the lesson. I don't know the full relationship that Bill Robinson had with the Romantic School of Music in New York, if he simply donated to it as he did to so many other great causes, or if he originally taught this lesson himself. Regardless, his memory will live on forever at the Romantic School of Music. Now, some may argue that there have been other tap dancers who could move their feet faster and jump higher than Bill Robinson. Yet, remember this: of all of the tap dancers who have ever lived, Mr. BoJangles is still the one who is loved and remembered the most. And every violinist, especially the classic violinist, needs to know exactly why and use his lesson in their own career. Bill Robinson was born in 1878, 13 years after the Civil War ended, and at a time when the cruel and oppressive Jim Crow laws were really kicking in. Bill began dancing on the streets of Richmond, Virginia, which happened to be the capital of the Confederacy, when he was 5 years old. And he began earning pennies and nickels almost immediately, which in 1884 was doing pretty good. Yet sadly, Bill was orphaned about 1 year later, and since his grandmother believed that dancing was a terrible sin and wouldn't even allow him to say the word, he dropped out of the first grade and ran away to Washington, D.C., so that he could further his career. Bill worked all kinds of jobs as a child in order to survive, and he even began training as a jockey at the racetrack because he loved horses so much. Yet dancing was always his real dream and his true love. He was almost entirely self-taught, yet by the time he was 13 years old, he was working professionally on stage as a comedian and as a dancer. Bill Robinson later decided to take on his childhood troublemaking nickname of BoJangles, and he moved to New York. He toured the country from coast to coast many times, and as they say, the rest is history. From minstrel shows, vaudeville and Broadway theater, to Hollywood movies, radio, television, and a tour of Europe. When Bill Robinson's feet finally fell silent at the age of 71, his funeral was the largest in New York's history, 10 times the size of Babe Ruth's the year before, with over 1.5 million people lining the streets. Why? Bill "BoJangles" Robinson was a true professional, and he had real talent. Yet, there was so much more to him than that. He loved to dress to the hilt, usually preferring a top hat and tails. And when it came to the really important tools of his trade, during his lifetime, Bill "BoJangles" Robinson spent more money on his tap dancing shoes than it would have cost him to purchase the 20 finest Stradivarius violins in existence. Not the average Stradivarius, but the 20 finest Stradivarius violins in the world. Yet, to achieve true greatness as a performer, Bill taught that you must not only foster an emotional connection with the audience, but also the general public. For Paganini, this was a combination of his unbelievable skill mixed with the ambiance that he created on the streets through whispers and rumors. The belief that he and his violin were somehow magic and supernatural. It was only by mixing these two ingredients together that the world craved him, and why more than half of his concerts were filled and overflowing with janitors, maids, and common laborers. This is why Paganini is remembered as the greatest violinist who has ever lived, because the general public believed that he was. They made him the greatest. The interesting and sad part is that Paganini never shared this secret with the school, but Mr. BoJangles did. And while most critics don't consider tap dancing on split clog shoes to be as fine of an art as the virtuoso violinist playing on a Stradivarius, Bill Robinson's ability to sway the masses and draw them in emotionally ranks him among the truest masters, possibly even greater than Paganini, at least in this respect. Mr. BoJangles taught us that the first few steps are quite logical. In fact, they are no secret at all. It's called practicing, paying the price, and then marketing yourself. The secret flavoring of Bill Robinson's true success is how he marketed himself. Bill Robinson not only practiced and performed almost constantly, day and night, he loved doing it. He never got tired of practicing or performing. But most of all, he loved it, even more when the audience loved it, and he always made sure that it showed. Later, when any other performer's career would have peaked or leveled off, Bill Robinson broadened his appeal by adding millions of sports fans. Yes, sports fans, to his list of admirers. He did this by setting up exhibition races and running backwards against the world's fastest sprinters. He could do this because of all of the hours he spent tap dancing and developing those different muscles in his legs. And Bill Robinson actually held the world's record for running backwards for over 50 years. It was also widely publicized that Jesse Owens, one of history's most famous Olympian athletes, gave Mr. BoJangles one of his prized gold medals from the Berlin Games in 1936. Sadly, Most classical violinists who otherwise have so much potential insist that all that matters is the quality of their music. So that's all that they concern themselves with, which seems like a noble cause, yet they are so dead wrong. It's like when a concert violinist says that all that matters in a violin is the sound. So let's take a look at how this part of the lesson can apply to a violinist today. Did you ever stop and ask yourself what Itzhak Perlman's career would have been if he had never appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show? Or, so much more importantly, Sesame Street? Or played the theme music to Schindler's List? These diversions may not make much sense to most classical violinists, but they do to the virtuoso, and it does to the audience. All audiences. Bill Robinson also brought in the masses by taking the drudgery of an everyday activity, like walking up and down the stairs, and making it into his trademark tap dancing routine. Yes, the Nicholas brothers took the stairs to an entirely different level, yet it was Bill Robinson who made the stair routine famous first. And it is so important to be the one who makes something famous first. There is so much expected of a classical violinist because you not only must follow in the footsteps of the original masters, you must also use your imagination to be original. And when you really are successful and you believe that you have finally arrived, you must keep going. Mr. BoJangles never stopped adding flavor and surprising the public. On top of so many other things, he invented the word copacetic, which means that everything is wonderful, and it matched his image. The word not only became part of his trademark, it was widely used around the world during his lifetime. Which brings us to the very best part of Bill Robinson and the true secret of his success. Yes, just like the virtuoso violinist playing Paganini's 24 Caprices, the audience respected Bill Robinson's amazing talent. But even more important, they loved him deeply. Even when he had to wear servant's clothes in the movies with Shirley Temple, almost every moment that Bill Robinson was on stage or in front of a camera, he had class and he wore a smile. His expression and posture made everything look effortless, and by relaxing the audience and making them feel good, they could really tell that he loved what he was doing. And to top it off was his trademark smile. Mr. BoJangles' smile was the most important ingredient of all. It was magic, and it was undeniably half of the reason for all of his fame and fortune. The secret isn't for you as a violinist to walk out on the concert stage and grin while playing the Beethoven Violin Concerto. The secret is for you as a violinist to find out who you are or who you wish to be as a performer and uniquely share that image and ambiance with the audience. And it is the deliberate act of doing this that will heighten the emotions of your audience so that your performance and their experience becomes magic. Also, remember that in show business, bad publicity isn't always bad. Don't get yourself down because of your failures or problems in life. Mr. BoJangles was secretly addicted to gambling, and he was shot and stabbed multiple times for many different reasons. Yet he always made it a point to hide his troubles and injuries and still go out on stage with a smile. He also became famous for bribing actually, police officers all across the country with gifts and free tickets to his shows. But more importantly, he became the largest benefactor in almost every large city to their policemen's retirement and disability funds. Of course, in that day and age, he almost had to, just to survive. And through it all, he was made the honorary mayor of Harlem. He was also given a gold pistol and the right to arrest people. The sad part is that this photograph was taken right after Bill Robinson was shot while chasing down a purse snatcher. You see, back then, the only thing that the police officer saw was a black man holding a pistol and chasing someone down on the street, and the police officer mistakenly shot him. Yet, because Bill Robinson quickly brushed it off and turned the attention back to his feet, at least publicly, he was portrayed in the newspapers and radio as a hero. And because of this attitude, even those who had hated him before for the color of his skin now went to see his performances and became some of his biggest fans. Don't be timid. Whatever direction or path you decide to take, own it and make it who you are. Learn to prompt your interviewers and those who will introduce you. It was never left to chance that Bill Robinson was almost always introduced as the world's greatest tap dancer and the dark cloud of joy. And above all else, as a violinist, remember that the more disciplined classical training and pure talent that you have, the more that you can get away with. One of the other reasons that the world loved Mr. BoJangles so much was that even though he was viewed by many as a poor, down-on-his-luck street and bar dancer, like the song portrays, during the Great Depression and World War II, Bill Robinson performed in over 3,000 charity events and raised over $100 million for the poor, the downtrodden, and the war effort. As a performer, if you really wish to be great and have your memory live forever, remember this advice from Mr. Bill BoJangles Robinson. Both on and off the stage, at competitions and performances, almost half of all artists give up their one chance of true success because they leave the judges and audiences with the impression that they don't want to be there. So if you ever have any doubt at all, smile. The party was actually held a month and a half early because Bill had to leave for Hollywood to begin filming just around the corner with Shirley Temple. There's a lot of photographs and some go quickly, so be ready on the pause button, and since many of the pages are loose and out of order, as you can see, I've decided to do high-quality scans instead and zoom in on most of the pictures to make this the best experience possible. To their credit, the Grand Street Boys Association was one of the few places in New York where different religions and races were welcome and treated equally. While policemen were on Bill's list of true friends, judges and politicians just couldn't get enough of him. And Fanny Clay was not only Bill's wife, she was also his manager for 22 years. I don't know who decided that Jimmy Walker, the corrupt ex-mayor of New York, and Judge Goldstein should both speak at Bill's birthday party. Because it doesn't look like it worked out very well by the look on Fanny's face. Yet it only takes the mention of Mr. BoJangles' name to lighten the mood and set the stage for a great evening. And of course, once on stage, Bill Robinson smiles and begins tap dancing. He puts on an act and then finishes with his feathered stance. And his trademark pose. I don't know the significance of Bill throwing a napkin into the audience, but if the photographs are in the correct order, it seems to be the cue to get the party started. The Big Apple dance was really popular at the time, and my understanding is that they brought in quite a few professional dancers to help do it justice. I'm not sure, but I think this next performance of dancing and gymnastics is by a group of deaf performers called the Merry-Go-Rounders, who would feel the vibrations of the floor in order to keep in time with the beat of the music. Because of the placement in the album and what's going on in the background, I'm not sure if this was a performer who would come and go, an announcer, or the actual chef. And this, of course, is Freddy Washington, one of the most prominent actresses and singers of the day. I've seen this dancer and actress before, but I can't remember her name. Maybe it's just me, but I think that this was a little early for the pandemic. Bill is invited back on stage again by the one and only Cab Calloway. Next, Mr. BoJangles is presented with a chef's apron, which seems to be the theme for the evening. And his birthday present is an extremely large portrait entitled BoJangles, painted by David Immerman and paid for by Jimmy Walker. Then there's a phone call. I'm not sure if it was the governor or the president, But considering that it was for Bill Robinson at his birthday party, the call for silence, and then the reactions on people's faces, it was probably one or the other, or both. And now, with his chef's hat on, Bill Robinson begins cutting the cake. For those who are unaware, Bill's favorite food in the whole world was vanilla ice cream, and he ate it every single day. The largest man on the left is Harry Wills, one of the greatest heavyweight champions who ever lived. And yes, you saw that right. The cake toppers are Bill Robinson and Shirley Temple. And last of all, of course, is the famous violinist, Henny Youngman, rumored to have attended a few lessons at the Romantic School of Music when he was young, yet decided to take his career in a completely different direction. I've listed a couple links to his performances in the description below this video, just for the fun of it. Bill BoJangles Robinson then went to Hollywood, and the rest is history.